So when Bitcoin has liquidity issues like this, it actually triggers balance sheets, specifically in companies like... Hey everybody, in tonight's video, I thought we'd be going over more of what the midterms are going to do, but we have some earnings we have to cover, and we really have to cover what's going on with Bitcoin and what is happening with the underlying securities that are associated with it, publicly traded companies and other things that are linked to it. So first and foremost, for those that are not aware, Binance entered an agreement to buy FTX. Why is this happening to Bitcoin? Make sure you subscribe to this channel and click all notifications because what we go over here is extremely timely. Now, this is the most recent article I could find from TechCrunch. Crypto giant Binance to acquire rival FTX following liquidity crunch. Look at the date and you can see that when this hit, there were a couple really key lines in here. Binance said Tuesday it signed a letter of intent to acquire most formidable rival. Surprising twist, 2-day spat. Now, out of this spat, what they did was the people that own Binance, I'm not going to butcher his name, but what the people did is they actually sold a specific stake that they had in the company. So as it went on, their holdings of FTT, the naked token of FTX, they dumped the stock. Okay, what this did was trigger it down, which is what triggered a litany of other sells. Now, why this is bad and what this did was it caused cash flow problems and margin requirement problems at FTX. So then you have somebody like Binance that can step in and they can put themselves in a position. Okay, and now that's very interesting. So, but what you're seeing here is they're basically excited that they're going to merge now and this is going to be great. There's a lot here that really sticks out to me. So now remind you, these guys were at each other's throats all week and they've been going back and forth for some time. Now, Zhao said Binance reached the decision of the three-year-old exchange and asked crypto behemoth for help. Quote, to protect users, we signed a non-binding LOI, letter of intent, intending to fully acquire FTX and help cover the liquidity crunch. Okay. So they injected capital in. When a company injects capital in like that, they do it because the other firm is going to go bankrupt or insolvent, and they pledge basically all the assets. Just understand that part of it. It's going to explain why we should be concerned in a moment here. We will be conducting a full due diligence in the coming day. Words you need to be paying attention to here, non-binding and full due diligence. Now, as this merger is being put together and FTX is coming out saying, oh, this is thrilled, this is a great merger for us, it's not a great merger for them. What that company is going to do, what Binance is going to do is what all these companies do. They're going to protect the capital that they put in. In order to protect the capital that they put in, they're going to liquidate assets. Okay, they're going to liquidate the assets that they're able to liquidate the easiest. Okay, that's why you're seeing this with Bitcoin and you're seeing the drop in Bitcoin. And I know it took us a little bit to get there, but it's really important you understand that because of what I'm going to explain next. So make sure you stay to the end because this could be extremely lucrative. So now we understand why we're breaking down, okay? So let's get away from it's an inflation hedge, it's the new currency, it's a way for the government not to control us. Let's get rid of all that, okay? And let's deal with the fact that now you have an underlying right? You have an underlying asset. We'll call Bitcoin an asset because it is. And that asset is being liquidated. Okay. That is why it's down today. Don't get it too twisted. It's down because it's being liquidated to meet cash that Binance is going to want and that they need to start liquidating in order to keep the company going. We saw this happen with companies like Lehman Brothers before, where they have to start selling things they don't want to sell and then the bids start dropping. Well, this can trigger a lot of events, but what I want to point out is you now have the single lowest close that we've had on here, and let's just go out on the monthly so you can see what we're dealing with. So if you look at this close on the monthly and we close here, this will be the single lowest close you've had in 2 years. Now, I know we're spending a lot of time on this and there's a reason for it. Technically, if you are to break this here and you are to break this flag to the downside, there's really nothing here until you get to about this level. Now that you're in this bar, right? Now that you're in this, there's really nothing here to about 13.5, 13.7. So that should really be your first target on Bitcoin. Now, how could you play this? Well, besides shorting it, besides the futures market, besides some other areas that I'm going to go over, okay, PITI was one area that we were talking about in the trading community today. I did not do this in the trading community today. I did coin, but we'll talk about that in a moment. What you're seeing here is you're just seeing that, oh, it's not a big deal. We're going to buy it. And all they did was just manipulate it. And then all of a sudden you can see how the short Bitcoin ETF, BITI, traded during the day. I have a hard time believing that this is over. Okay, I have a hard time believing that someone's going to do that amount of due diligence in days and not find problems. Okay, there's a prop trading arm of FTX that's linked to the company in and of itself. They're going to have to liquidate that, right? So by the time you're done, you're going to have, are you going to liquidate the illiquid tokens or the liquid tokens? So, okay, so now you have an asset that has a finite amount of it. Okay, we're referring to Bitcoin as an asset. We said that it could get to 13. Who else is going to be affected by that? Well, people are going to say, well, Coinbase is not going to be affected by it. Well, Binance is number one in holding of Bitcoin assets. If I wanted to go after my competition, very simple, what would I do? Okay, what would I do? I would go after their asset. What is their number one holding asset? What is their linchpin that is helping their liquidity? Well, it's Bitcoin. So if I can drop Bitcoin down, right, it's the holdings, the most liquid holding that they have is Bitcoin. And now Binance is in charge of it, essentially. So they can control the market right now. They can drop it, okay, which can trigger a whole litany of other issues for other companies we're going to get to in a moment here. But it really is going to affect coin more than anything now. Technically, you have a line right here. You broke that line. You're back to 51. I traded this. I currently have a short position still. Can these trade up and then roll back down? Absolutely. Am I telling you that you have to run out there and short this right away? No, this is no different than when we looked at CVNA. Okay? And we were back here and I was explaining the whole, the bond offering and why that bond offering was bad, blah, blah, blah. Traded down here. This is when everybody on Twitter told me I didn't know what I was doing. And now we're back to $7. I don't seem to be able to let that go for some reason. But anyway, so let's just keep going here. So what happens? So we get down to 13.7. Let's just say that happens. Well, what happens to coins' assets? What happens to their lines of credit? Does anybody know? Because that seems like where we're going with this, right? And what we want to look at. You know, before something like this happened, just on an asset under management level, you had people that were looking at this and saying it's worth about $20. So how much is it worth if they're underlying assets and puts them in an issue? It's a real problem for this company. Now, it's also going to affect the little guys like Hood, and you can see that. The thing that's so fascinating to me and why this one's down 18%, while the other one's only down 10, Hood has about $8, $9 in assets, right? Like they have real cash there. So, and yes, it's accounted for, but it's still there. So I was kind of surprised by that. Now, the one problem for Hood is that everybody thought Hood was going to get bought by FTX. Well, that dream is dead. Okay, that dream is dead now. So they're going to be standalone, and I don't know really what that means for the company, but that's something that they're going to have to work. They're going to have to work through. Now, who else is going to be affected by this? MicroStrategy. Okay, there are all kinds of covenants here for them on when they're going to have to, one, liquidate Bitcoin, liquidate stock. There are so many triggers in those convertibles outstanding that I don't know how we're going to get through this without one of them triggering. Now, I could spend a long time just on those triggers, but let's just focus on what we see happening here. Long red bars down, we don't really come back from. We try, but we very rarely come back from them. It takes some time. Sometimes you lift, sometimes you don't. But when you start cracking and you get below these kinds of trend lines, you need to start paying attention to it, okay? And what I'm saying is if you start getting below and closing below this, which is roughly just happens to be 200, this thing can go a lot lower, and it can go a lot lower fast. Because if you're in this, you're getting to the point where now you own an asset that has a convertible, so your debt payments are higher than they were right from years ago, and you're down about what, 50% on the asset that you had to acquire? And meanwhile, the dollar's up 14% on the year. So I'm not so sure how forgiving people are going to be with this. And I still think there's a short there. Now, there are a couple other names I want to go over very quickly here. And I do want to just discuss a couple of these names. So Disney After Hours was an absolute disaster. 30 cents versus 56-cent estimate. So I'm waiting for the conference call to see how this goes. I already did a short on it. And I already covered it after hours, candidly. What I'm going to watch is that 90.71 tomorrow. If you break that, well, that gets us into a whole other realm, right? So if we break this line right here, you can see my peak break. You can see the whole thing spelled out right here. This could drop you precipitously if you get through that 90.71. Some of these other names I think we should really go over. Okay, so you have like Affirm. Now, this was another disaster, and let me just walk you through this. 86 cents in losses on increased revenues. So we lost more money on increased revenues. So that's a really interesting question as to why that happened. That's not good. On top of that, you're looking at 2023 at 1.6 billion versus the 1.17 estimate. This is not where you want to be for this company. Now, it's not surprising. We had 30% of the revenues coming from Peloton. I think it's substantially less than that now since nobody wants to be on a Peloton anymore, apparently. And what are you doing? What are you financing here, right? As I was making jokes in the trading community, which I thought were funny, that what are you going to do? Payment plans on toothpaste? I mean, what's the game plan with the company? So I think it's very interesting, but I think that this thing's absolutely toast. Is it a zero? I don't know enough about the balance sheet to go through that, but I just think on any rally that you should be shorting this. I view this no differently than UPST, and this is a really good time for me to just state this. You know, you're going to see a lot of people that wrote research reports on these companies and how they were going to 400 and they were going to revolutionize the world, okay? There is a huge disconnect between people that actually understand how to read a balance sheet and what is put out as research. Okay, so I'm not saying this to target anyone in particular because it's basically the whole social media space. But when they started holding assets on their own books is when this started cracking. That was here. When they started holding assets and they couldn't sell their loans anymore, that's when we started to run into problems. This was the beginning of it. And if you look at these conference calls, this was the beginning of it. This is when it looked like they got it under control. This is when we realized they didn't get it under control. Okay, so yes, we can look at the technical analysis, but when you start understanding fundamental analysis and you start understanding that the core business does not work, and anyone can say anything they want, but this core business does not work. Okay, if it worked, you wouldn't be at 14 from 400. All right, and that's where you are this evening. So what do you do with this? To me, this is very, very simple. Right? Wait for the rallies and short it. That's all you do with this now. Do you do it tomorrow? You could. I can't imagine how this conference call is going to be any better whatsoever. I just don't see it. But, you know, I don't know that you want to short something that's down 22%. So like Affirm, like Disney, see if they bounce. So this one was a little long tonight. Comment on that, please. Let me know if these are too long. I know people have jobs, responsibilities. I didn't even get in the midterms. And what I'm expecting for tomorrow. And also make sure you subscribe to the channel, click all notifications. We're going to do a live stream. We're going to live stream CPI. So make sure you subscribe to the channel because I'm going to send the link out through the channel, through the community tab ahead of time. If you are interested in the trading community, it is now waitlisted. It is closed. There is a link in description. If you click on that link, and I'll put one up here as well, if you click on that link, put your name in, you'll get signed up for the newsletter, and you'll be added to the wait list. Have a good night, everyone.